your bell work today, we're in lesson 8 of our guided notes. Kohl's R Us and Ratcliffe's are having sales. At Kohl's R Us, a pair of sneakers is on sale for 40% off the regular price of $50. At Ratcliffe's, the same brand of sneakers is discounted by 30% off of the regular price of $40. Which store has the better sale price? So you can look at Kohl's R Us. You have 40% off of $50. So I'm just going to label that C. And for our other store, Ratcliffe, it is 30% off of $40.
Is that pencil from
You're either going to subtract your percents first or subtract from your original once you find the amount that you are saving. If you subtract your percents out in the beginning, if we have 40% off, we're not paying 40%, but what percent are we paying for? 60. We set up our proportion. 60% is 60 over 100, and our original price is 50, so that goes in our denominator. We're then going to cross multiply. 50 times 60 is 3,000, and we have to divide by our leftover number, which is 100, and we get 30. So at Kohl's R Us, it's going to be $30 for the sneakers. At Ratcliffe's, if you have 30% off, what percent are we actually paying? 70%. So we set up our fraction. 70% is 70 over 100, and our starting amount is 40. We cross multiply. 70 times 40 is 2,800, and we divide by 100 to get 28. So which one would be cheaper?
The 28.
Yeah, 28 at Ratcliffe's. So Ratcliffe's would have the better buy. The heading for our notes today is simple interest, and our targets are students will be able to solve simple interest problems and apply the simple interest equation to real-world problems. We have a couple of new vocabulary words. The first one is principal. A different kind of principal. This one, principal, is the amount of money deposited or borrowed. Our next vocabulary word is simple interest. And our simple interest is the amount paid or earned for the use of the money. We're using the formula that's written right here. I equals P times R times T. I stands for interest. P is your principal, and your principal is your starting amount.
What? Is that, bro? And T is thing. Oh.
Rate. So R is our rate, and that needs to be written as a decimal. Yes. And T is time, and your time is expressed in years. So it's important that your rate is always expressed as a decimal, and your time is in years. If you borrow money from a bank, you pay the bank interest for the use of their money. If you are solving for your rate, once you get your answer, make sure you change it back to a percent because it's written as a decimal in your equation. Hey, if you look at the first example, we have Arnold puts $580 into a savings account. The account pays 3% simple interest. How much interest will he earn in 5 years? So there's two parts to this question. If we focus on the top part for 5 years, this 5 years, what would that be in our formula? Our I, our P, the R, or the T? T, that's our time. If he's starting with $580 in his account, what would that represent? I, P, or R? P, our principal, or our starting amount. And this 3% would represent what?
R.
Our rate, which is R. When we have our rate, we want to express it as a decimal. So to change 3% to a decimal, we can divide by 100. And what's 3 divided by 100? 0.03. And then we're going to plug in the values into our formula. I equals P times R times T. We know that P is what? 580. Our R written as a decimal is 0.03. And we are multiplying by our years, which is 5. So go ahead and multiply these three values.
Miss Fuentes, I got a question. Do you want to record on the computer or
Someone's dead.
you said, well, how come isn't it going to be the same thing? But she said,
So when you multiply these three values together, 580 times 0.03 times 5, what do we get?
87.
87, which means that our I equals 87, or there's going to be $87 in interest.
Oh, this is easy.
For the second part of this question, we want to find out how much he would earn in 6 months. But if you remember from our formula, we want our time expressed in years. How many months are in a year?
12.
12. So if we have 6 out of the 12, we could change this to a decimal by dividing. And what's 6 divided by 12?
0.5.
0.5. So that's what we plug in for our T. So we're using the same formula. I equals P times R times T. Our P is the same. We have 580. Our rate is the same. It's 0.03. Except this time we want to know how much you will earn in 6 months, which we know is half of a year, or 0.5. So go ahead and multiply these three values. 580 times 0.03 times 0.5, and what do we get?
88. She really said, I don't know.
8.7, which is $8.70.
Is there a 47 all the time?
So for our second example, Luis is taking out a car loan for $5,000. He plans on paying off the car loan in 2 years. At the end of the 2 years, he will have paid $300 in interest. What is the simple interest rate? So this time we don't know what R is. We're looking for R. If he starts by taking out $5,000, that would be our what? That would be our P. And we have in 2 years, which would represent our T or time, he will have paid $300 in interest. So 300 is our I. So we use the formula I equals P times R times T, and we want to fill in the values that we know. So this time we know that I is 300, so I'm going to fill that in. P is what?
5,000.
5,000. Do we know what R is?
No.
No, so I'm going to skip that for right now. And what's my value for T?
300.
2. And then we don't know R, so I'm going to bring down R. Can we do anything to 300?
Yeah, we can.
No, so we're just going to leave it. Can we do anything to 5,000 times 2?
10,000.
Yeah, we can multiply them, and 5,000 times 2 gives us
10,000.
10,000. And I bring down my R. If I want to get R by itself, this is 10,000 times R, so we want to do the opposite. What's the opposite of multiplying?
Dividing.
Dividing, so we're going to divide both sides by 10,000. 10,000 divided by 10,000 is 1 R. So this cancels and leaves us with R. And when you divide 300 divided by 10,000, what do you get?
0.03.
0.03. So we know we have a rate of 0.03. If we want to change that back to a percent, we could move our decimal place 2 to the right, and we know that we have a 3% interest rate. Okay, go ahead and try the 2 on your own problems.